Mercedes has a power unit strong enough to dominate Formula One. But that same power unit may be the flaw destroying its season from the inside. Russell was leading in Canada before retirement turned a possible win into zero. Antonelli has already lost 26 places across lap 1 incidents, with wheel spin and clutch issues exposing how sensitive this Mercedes really is. And that is the terrifying part. This is not a slow car problem. This is a control problem. More electrical power. More energy recovery. More pressure on starts. More punishment for every mistake. One bad launch, one wasted deployment phase, one reliability failure from the lead, and Mercedes goes from championship weapon to disaster in seconds. The engine is not weak. It is powerful enough to win, but fragile enough to ruin everything. Subscribe to the channel. At first, Mercedes looked like it had found the perfect weapon for the new era. A car with enough speed to fight at the front. A power unit strong enough to make rivals nervous. A rookie winning races before anyone expected him to. A proven driver still capable of putting the car on pole when the window opened. On the surface, that sounds like control. But underneath, Mercedes had a problem hiding in plain sight. The car was fast, but it was not simple. And that difference matters. A simple fast car gives the driver confidence. It reacts cleanly. It launches well. It lets the team turn performance into points without constantly fighting the system underneath. But a complicated fast car is different. It gives you incredible speed when everything lines up, then punishes you brutally when one tiny piece falls out of place. That is the Mercedes danger. Russell's Canada retirement showed one side of it. He was not fighting for a lucky finish. He was leading. The car had already done the hard part. The win was alive. The points were waiting. Then the race disappeared. That kind of failure cuts deeper than a normal bad result, because it proves the performance was there. Mercedes did not lose because it had no pace. Mercedes lost because it could not convert the pace into a finish. And in a championship, that is deadly. Because rivals do not need Mercedes to be slow every weekend. They only need Mercedes to keep wasting the weekends where it is fast. Then there is Antonelli's side of the story. He has been the driver making the Mercedes look frightening. Wins, confidence, championship momentum, and a driving style that seems naturally connected to the 2026 car. But even Antonelli's season carries a warning. He has already lost 26 places across lap 1 incidents. That number matters because starts are not random. They are the first stress test of the whole power system. The clutch has to bite correctly. The software target has to be right. The rear tires have to accept the torque. The driver has to feel the grip instantly. The electrical power has to become acceleration, not wheel spin. If one part is wrong, the car does not launch. It wastes energy. It loses traction. It falls into traffic. And suddenly, the fastest car on the grid is fighting a race it should never have been in. That is why Mercedes brought software work and a new clutch paddle in Canada. Teams do not make those changes because everything is healthy. They make them because a weakness has been identified, and that weakness is costing performance before the race has even properly begun. This is where the engine story becomes much bigger than an engine failure. Because modern Formula One power is not just about the engine surviving. It is about how the whole power unit behaves under pressure. The 2026 Mercedes has massive electrical output. It can recover energy, deploy energy, and deliver huge power to the rear wheels. But that power has to be controlled with extreme precision. Too much at the wrong moment, and the tires spin. Too little at the wrong moment, and the car becomes vulnerable. Use energy inefficiently, and the driver may arrive at the next attack zone without enough power to defend or overtake. That is the fatal flaw. The Mercedes power unit is not weak. It may be too sensitive. It gives the car incredible performance, but only when the driver, the software, the clutch, the tires, and the energy system all agree perfectly. And Formula One does not give teams perfect conditions every weekend. A race start is messy. Traffic is messy. Tire temperature is messy. Pressure is messy. A driver fighting wheel-to-wheel cannot manage every detail like a laboratory test. So if the Mercedes needs everything to be perfect to stay in its strongest window, then every Grand Prix becomes dangerous. That is why Russell and Antonelli are exposing the same problem in different ways. Russell's retirement showed the cost of losing reliability from a winning position. Antonelli's start problems showed the cost of failing to turn power into clean traction. One looks like a race-ending disaster. The other looks like messy first laps. But both point to the same deeper issue. Mercedes has built a car with enormous performance, but that performance is trapped inside a system with very little room for error. And when the room for error is small, championship pressure becomes heavier. Every launch matters. Every deployment phase matters. Every braking zone matters. Every corner exit matters. One mistake does not stay small. A little wheel spin can become lost energy. Lost energy can become poor acceleration. Poor acceleration can become lost track position. Lost track position can become overheated tires. Overheated tires can become a compromised strategy. A compromised strategy can become lost points. That is how a championship slips away without one single dramatic collapse. It slips away through connected failures. Small problems that feed the next problem. A bad start creates traffic. Traffic damages tire life. Damaged tires force strategy changes. Strategy changes cost track position. Track position forces risk. And risk creates more chances for the car to fail. That is the chain Mercedes must break. Because raw speed is not enough anymore. The team has already shown it can produce speed. Antonelli's wins prove it. Russell's Canada pole proves it. The car's pace across different circuits proves it. But the question now is not whether Mercedes can be fast. The question is whether Mercedes can be clean. Clean starts. Clean deployment. Clean reliability. Clean conversion of performance into points. That is the part that decides championships. And right now, Mercedes looks like a team with a rocket in its hands, trying to make sure it does not burn the launch pad every time it takes off. That image matters because it explains why rivals will still believe they can fight Mercedes. If Mercedes simply had the fastest and most reliable car, the championship would begin to look closed. But if the fastest car keeps revealing sensitive weaknesses, then the door stays open. Ferrari can wait for a Mercedes mistake. McLaren can wait for a bad launch. Red Bull can wait for a reliability issue. Every rival knows that they do not need to beat Mercedes at its absolute best. They need to survive long enough for Mercedes' own complexity to create an opportunity. That is why this first part of the story is so important. The problem is not that Mercedes has failed to build a fast power unit. The problem is that its power unit may have become the most unforgiving part of the car. Fast enough to dominate. Sensitive enough to punish. Strong enough to win races. Fragile enough to throw them away. And after Russell's retirement, after Antonelli's start losses, after the software and clutch changes, the warning is no longer hidden. Mercedes' biggest weapon is also the thing every rival is waiting to see break. Then the second problem appears. Because Mercedes is not only fighting reliability, it is fighting conversion. And conversion is the difference between having the fastest car and actually winning the championship. A fast car gives you the chance. A clean car gives you the result. That is why Russell's Canada retirement and Antonelli's lap 1 losses matter so much. They are not the same type of failure, but they both destroy conversion. One takes a lead and turns it into zero. The other takes qualifying performance and throws the car into traffic before the strategy has even begun. Different symptoms. Same damage. Mercedes arrives with performance, then loses part of that performance before it can become points. That is a championship problem. Because in Formula 1, the scoreboard does not care what the car could have done. It does not care how fast the simulations looked. It does not care how strong the long run was on Friday. It does not care whether the driver had the pace to win if the race had stayed clean. The scoreboard only counts what survives. And right now, Mercedes has already shown that its speed does not always survive the weekend. That is what rivals will study. Not just the lap time. The weakness behind the lap time. Ferrari, McLaren, Red Bull, and every team trying to stay alive in the title fight will look at Mercedes and understand the same thing. You may not need to beat this car when it is perfect. You need to pressure it until it is not perfect anymore. Force a difficult start. Force the Mercedes into traffic. Force the driver to use more battery earlier than planned. Force the tires into a hotter window. Force the team to choose between saving energy and attacking. That is where the so-called fatal flaw becomes more than a technical issue. It becomes a race strategy for every rival. Because if Mercedes has a narrow operating window, then the job of the opposition is to push it outside that window. The 2026 power unit makes this even more intense. The electrical side is no longer a small supporting role. It is central to how the car creates lap time. The car recovers energy under braking, stores it, and deploys it when the driver needs acceleration. That means every lap is a balancing act. Use too much too soon, and the car may be exposed later. Save too much, and the driver may lose the chance to attack. Deploy aggressively while the tires are not ready, and the rear wheels spin. Spin the rear wheels, and the energy becomes waste. Waste energy, and the next straight becomes harder. That is how a tiny mistake becomes a chain reaction. And Mercedes has already shown signs of that chain. Antonelli's start problems are a perfect example. A poor launch does not end when the car reaches turn 1. It continues. The driver is now behind cars he should have cleared. The tires are now working in dirty air. The battery may need to be used to recover position instead of executing the planned race. The driver may have to attack earlier, defend harder, and accept more risk. A lost start can infect the entire Grand Prix. That is why the number 26 lost places across lap 1 incidents is so important. It tells us this was not just one messy launch. It was a pattern Mercedes had to address. And when a team brings new software work and a new clutch paddle, it is admitting something without having to say it loudly. The start system needed help. That is not a small thing in a season where starts can decide whether a driver controls clean air or spends the afternoon trapped behind slower cars. Antonelli has been strong enough to win despite the chaos, but that may actually make the problem more alarming. Because if the championship leader is still losing positions at the start, then Mercedes may be winning in spite of a weakness, not because the weakness is gone. That distinction matters. Winning can hide an issue, but it cannot erase it. And Russell's side of the garage exposes the other half. Russell has not lacked speed. Canada proved that. His pole position showed he can still put the Mercedes at the front. He can still find a lap when the conditions suit him. He can still be a serious title-level driver. But the problem is that his opportunities are already becoming more expensive. When Antonelli is winning repeatedly, Russell cannot afford weekends where the result disappears. He needs every leading position to become points. He needs every pole to become a podium at minimum. He needs every strong race to close the gap, not widen it. So a retirement from the lead does not just cost him one result. It changes the teammate battle. It changes the championship pressure. It changes the way Mercedes evaluates momentum. Because every time Russell loses points, Antonelli's position inside the team grows stronger. And that is where the power unit issue connects directly to team politics. If Antonelli is the driver better suited to managing the car's energy-heavy style, Mercedes will naturally learn from him. Engineers follow the stopwatch. The development direction begins to lean toward the driver extracting the most performance. Setup ideas become influenced by the driver whose style makes the car work. That is not betrayal. That is how Formula One teams operate. But for Russell, it creates a second fight. He is not only trying to beat Antonelli. He is trying to make sure the car does not evolve completely toward Antonelli's strengths. And that makes every reliability loss more damaging. Because if Russell loses track time, loses race results, or loses chances to prove his style works, the team gets more evidence from the other side of the garage. Antonelli becomes the reference. The data builds around him. The upgrade feedback begins to carry his fingerprints. The future of the Mercedes becomes easier to imagine through his driving. That is how a driver can lose influence without one dramatic internal decision ever being made. It happens through results. And the power unit is a huge part of that story. Because this Mercedes seems to reward a driver who can use energy efficiently while still being aggressive. Antonelli appears comfortable rotating the car early, using tighter lines, and keeping the car in a better position to deploy power cleanly on exit. Russell's strength is more precise and controlled, and in certain sections that still works beautifully. But if the 2026 car rewards early rotation, cleaner energy use, and a more instinctive relationship with the rear axle, then Antonelli's advantage becomes structural. That is the word Mercedes should fear. Structural. Because a temporary gap can be closed with confidence. A setup gap can be closed with changes. A bad weekend can be corrected at the next race. But a structural difference means the car itself is asking for something one driver naturally gives more often than the other. That is why the engine discussion is not separate from driving style. It is all connected. The way the driver brakes affects energy recovery. The way the driver rotates the car affects throttle application. The way the driver exits the corner affects wheel spin. The wheel spin affects energy waste. The energy waste affects deployment. The deployment affects attack and defense. And attack and defense decide race results. That is the modern Mercedes chain. When it works, the car looks terrifying. When it fails, the race falls apart quickly. That is why calling it an engine flaw is only the beginning. The real issue is not one metal part inside the car. It is the whole relationship between power, software, traction, energy, and driver behavior. If that relationship is perfect, Mercedes can dominate. If it is slightly wrong, the car becomes vulnerable in ways rivals can exploit. And this is exactly why the Canada upgrade package matters. The team brought aerodynamic updates, but also software and clutch changes. That combination shows Mercedes was chasing more than raw lap time. It was chasing better control of the whole performance package.